Hello, this is Toner Quinn, editor of the Journal of Music, and this is the 8th episode of the Journal of Music podcast. For this week's podcast, I spoke to 4 people in music whose work has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, and we ask, with so many concerts and festivals cancelled, what now for music and the arts? The 4 contributors are fiddle player Colm McInnomara, Angela Dorgan of First Music Contact, Jerry Keenan of the Irish Chamber Orchestra, and clarinetist Deirdre O'Leary. My first conversation is with Colm McInnomara. Known for his work with the group The Frames, but also his recent solo albums, he had to cancel various concerts, but took his music online. Here's our conversation. Colm, what would you have been doing this week if it weren't for the pandemic?
Well, actually, I would have been in Livorno, Italy today.
And what was taking place there?
A literary festival, and I was travelling there with Peter Murphy, the writer, and Catherine Dunn, and Stephen James Smith, and Baskerville, the group from Wexford, and Catherine Fitzgerald, who plays piano with me, and we were playing. Would have been a kind of collaboration of literature and music, playing last night, today, and tomorrow.
But you were also meant to play around or on St. Patrick's Day, weren't you?
Yeah, actually, the night before, I was supposed to play in Vicar Street. Yeah. And
was that a solo concert?
Well, solo in me, myself, and 10 others. It was myself and the Contempo Quartet and my kind of movable feast, which incorporates anything between 4 people and 8 people. So I think it would have been, in total, it would have been 11 or 12 on stage. Yeah. So that's.
I imagine a lot of planning was going into that.
Absolutely, rehearsals, swapping dots and sheets, and rehearsal. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I think it all seems so trite to be even thinking about it in a way with the immensity of the stuff that's going on. But yeah, for sure, it's an adjustment. But instead, you decided to have an online concert, and you did that pretty soon. I think on the 15th of March was it the Sunday? That's right. Yeah. Well, I just figured, we'd done the Facebook Live thing over the years. Occasionally, it'd been probably a year at least since I did it before. Just as a way of kind of keeping in touch with people. And I just thought it seemed like a kind of an affirmative thing to do, and then and also just the fact that knowing that people were at home. And the kind of the people who'd bought tickets, and just a sense of I didn't kind of have any kind of master plan or whatever. So it was just to play it, and of course it was nice because I'm at home with the lads, my 2 teenagers, and my wife. She's a painter, Sheila, and so we just decided to kind of incorporate the just what's going on with where we're at, and that sense of kind of, I think it kind of captured the mood of where people were at. Everybody kind of enforced family time. Yeah. What's the connection like? What's the connection like? Not the actual digital connection, but the actual connection with your audiences when you're doing an online concert, say for an hour. Can you feel some sort of connection with the audience? It's funny that, yeah. Well, actually, the connection that I had, the palpable connection, because I didn't really go in for the kind of reading the iPad and hello to such and such from, because I just thought it would have broken my flow. And so what I had was my son Ushin was sitting beside me, and he had Sheila's iPad on his lap, and I could see, there's a delay on the feed as well. But I could see just the emojis, various flying up on the screen. So it's just definitely a sense of kind of, shared experience about it, which is lovely. In the scale of things, it may be, as you say, a little bit trite to talk about individual concerts and things like that. But nonetheless, this is going to have a major impact on music. In fact, it may already have changed the way we think about the music scene. I think it's kind of fundamental in that it kind of changes our relationship with art. And I think that we're in this, once in a lifetime point where everybody is having this communal enforced solitariness and having just in a way that the clock, the watch has stopped for everybody simultaneously. And I think that kind of just makes us kind of reevaluate. And I think it's going to be a process. I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg now. But I just think, I always loved Steve Cooney's, I think I heard talking about this many years ago, about the idea of the musician as being a part of the community, and that the history of recorded music is very recent, really. So it wasn't so long ago that if you wanted to hear music, you were listening to a musician or a singer or whatever.
Yeah.
So that I think that perhaps, that's what we're returning to, and the whole idea of rather than, the music business per se, which has been a bit of a distraction, and you couldn't hand on heart say that it's kind of ended up eating its own tail, the way it's gone. So perhaps what we have ahead is something more meaningful.
Do you think things can change that radically? Like you mentioned there, that the way we understand our connection to art, that it could change that quickly in just a matter of days?
I think it has, actually, and I think the only thing that's changed is our busyness. I think that I just think that whether that be cinema or the virtual museum tours or literature, it's in a way that kind of I certainly when you mentioned that we'd be talking, I started thinking, and I thought the first major kind of, I think, imbalance to be corrected would be the royalty rates that are paid out by companies such as Spotify, etc. And their streaming. I think that has to be completely reshuffled.
Why is that?
At the moment? Yeah, well, at the moment, I think Spotify are paying something like $3.15 per 1,000 streams or something like that, which is just not tenable. And I think I think across the board, systems I think are going to be, I think in a way that kind of the emperor is going to be seen to have no clothes, in many regards, and many aspects of life that we've become so kind of blind to. I think that there's so many kind of systemic kind of imbalances and injustices that are going to become so clear. I was always of the view that the human race would never change until we had to change. That's just human nature. And a moment like this, and appreciating, of course, that, in a way we've experienced the earthquake and are kind of waiting for the tidal wave after. So we're in that kind of unique moment. We're in between trauma at the moment, in a way, and of course, in Italy, they're in the thick of it, and things look incredibly grim in so many parts of the world. But simultaneously, there's such an opportunity and a promise there as well for a far more equitable world.
Do you think, or do you feel, even at this stage, that people are going to value music more because of this?
I would say undoubtedly, yeah, for sure. Obviously, huge amounts of people have lost their livelihood, so it's really hugely worrying from that point of view, as regards, well, how do you create something? How do you monetize things? So maybe I hear there are different kind of platforms out there. I haven't looked into it sufficiently to talk about it, but I think there are options for monetizing performances, but that'll all kind of happen naturally. But I think I'm kind of enjoying the pre-money phase at the moment, where it's kind of case of it's about solidarity and social solidarity, and it's going back to that idea of the community musician, where the musician has a role to play, where playing at the christening or at the funeral or at the wedding, and not essential way and a meaningful way rather than in a kind of a commercial way.
That was fiddle player Colm McAnumara. Next, I speak to Angela Dorgan of First Music Contact, the resource organisation which presents showcases of Irish artists and bands abroad under the title Music from Ireland. And last week, Angela should have been at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, but that was cancelled too.
So Music from Ireland is one of the 5 things, key kind of deliveries we do at the moment. So we just do what everyone else is doing. We bring it online. We are members of a European network called EME, the European Music Exporters Exchange, and that's a 26 member network. So we are all going to now look inwards and map our own industries and then have that information up in a central portal for people to share, as you know, and do some networking, desk networking for now. Right. Our next 2 events are May and June. One in May in Great Escape. That's looking quite unlikely. And then everything else is kind of up in the air. So June, we are due to have 5 acts showcasing at Primavera. We are due to have 10 labels, managers and publishers attend a network event in New York. That's unlikely. And I suppose what we're looking at is the other thing we do is Ireland Music Week, which is the annual showcase event where we, with funding from Culture Ireland, bring buyers into Dublin. So we'll probably look at spending the time and energy and money that we got to go to these international events on bringing more international delegates to Dublin for Ireland Music Week, and have the networking and the eyeballing and the showcasing at that. But again, that's assuming we're all good by October. But we're feeling quite positive, and we're steaming ahead with networking and stuff online with AIM Ireland, which is the Association of Independent Music, which we launched last year. And then later on in the summer, we will launch Music Venues Ireland. So a lot of our work is resourcing and tying the sector together and bringing the sector together, and we'll, as much as we can, do that online. We're also partnering with RTE Culture to do a daily update of where performers are going to bring their performances online.
Right.
So that people can continue to support musicians.
And you've also published a survey to try and gather some information on the impact on artists, on the impact on their incomes.
We have. It's artists and the rest of the sector. So venue, event managers, freelance. There's so many people who help artists get to the stage, literally. So we're doing a survey. We're going to conduct it every Friday. We launched it yesterday, and then I'm also the current chair of the National Campaign for the Arts. So we then expanded that music one out into a national, a general arts survey, and it's an endeavour to measure actual losses on a week-to-week basis in the sector, so that wherever we can address those losses collectively, and we can measure the same as all other sectors in society are measuring the commercial but also the human impact to the sector. And also, one of the key things we're measuring is, are artists still able to work? Social distancing might mean that larger ensembles, bands can't get together. So we want to measure the human and financial impact and address it, because we are a sector, as you know, that was devastated by the last crash, but there was no real measurement of how that impacted. So we wanted to be sure that there was data in whatever it may be used for at the other end of all of this, that there's data and measurement and conversations happening where people feel supported and engaged with.
And what do you think could happen or should happen, and what is going to happen for artists in the coming months then?
So there's layers of that. I think there's quite a lot of knee-jerking at the minute. So I think that one of the reasons to that people don't have a straight answer or an immediate answer to that question, I'm imagining, is no one knows how long it will last for. So, for instance, we're a resource organisation. We get 2/3 of what it costs to keep our company open from the Arts Council, but the other third is generated through self-generated income. So, by selling tickets at the festival, by able to get sponsorships to help us pay for Ireland Music Week, but also to keep our staff for the last quarter of the year. We now don't know whether or not we will have that event to help us get sponsorship for, whether the wider industry will have sponsorship money. And I'm sure there are a lot of people in similar cases. I know the Arts Council has committed to honouring all their funding commitments for this year. So I think where possible, people who have engaged with artists can and will be allowed to pay them, even if the event doesn't go ahead. But I think the answer to that, Donor, is a day by day. But I do think that anybody who has funds will be cleared to use them, even if events don't happen. And outside of that, then I think people are taking their performances online. We're definitely pushing people towards online performances and donations. We're pushing people towards going on an artist page and buying their music. I think we should remember that music and books and films are what's keeping everybody sane at the moment. So just to remind everyone that that's not made for free. So everyone will be pinched and scared. So I suppose long term we don't know, but short term, I think if we can hold steady, it might not last very long.
Do you think that it's going to change the music scene? Do you think it's already changed the music scene? Even in a few days, it's shifted the way we think about things.
Of course it has. Of course it has. I mean, live is one of the key elements. If you think about, everyone, when you talk in our world, at least in the music industry, about how you can make income as an artist and how all those around you can make income, live and merch tied together are 1/3 of how you recording and then publishing are the other streams. So it's, for a lot of people, when streaming went online, and streaming is not a great way for artists to make a living. You make some money, but not at all what you could from sales or broadcast. So live was the last bastion of how literally to keep a band or an artist on the road. And now, for the time being at least, that's been decimated. So it will fundamentally change the music industry for now. It will, hopefully we can recover. I'm confident that if everyone takes a big hit now in terms of social distancing and clubs being closed and venues being closed, the more we all adhere to that, hopefully the sooner it all opens back. That may be the optimist in me, but I think there's a certain amount of this we can hold steady for, and then after that, I think we're largely in a new world order anyway. But I think the music industry and the arts in general have shown that that we're quite robust in terms of hanging on. Now, that's not the ideal situation, but I think the creative industries again will come up with solutions, because that's what we do. We're all really creative. So I'm hoping that if when one area of income is lost, maybe another might come in its place. So we'll just have to, I think it's a wait and see, and just support people when you can.
Angela Dorgan from First Music Contact. The Irish Chamber Orchestra also had to cancel 2 concerts this month. Jerry Keenan, CEO of the group, told me about how the orchestra is adjusting to the new reality. Jerry, you had a concert coming up at the end of the month, 2 concerts coming up at the end of the month, which were sold out with the Turkish pianist Fazil Say. So what impact has the pandemic now had on the Irish Chamber Orchestra?
I suppose it's just the initial disappointment of completely selling out in Dublin, and we had a very good house building in Limerick. The situation for the players is drastic enough. But there was an intervention by Martin O'Sullivan, who is the deputy director of the Arts Council and head of finance there, and he issued a really extraordinary email on the day after the announcement was made that effectively no gatherings of over 100 people. And that announcement was to the effect that all arts organisations who are strategically funded by the Arts Council can draw down up to 90% of their grant for this year to keep financially afloat, and that we were to prioritise paying the artists. And that is something I have to say I can't express enough my gratitude for that. And I think it's particularly in the Irish Chamber Orchestra situation, where a lot of our members work in various different orchestras and indeed countries, and overnight found their work literally dismantled, all their playing work dismantled. And it was really wonderful to be able to offer them. We work on a retainer system for the contract players, and to be able to offer them the full retainer and some concert fees, because obviously we're not getting all of our income, but the players effectively are not down any money for the moment. And that was great to be able to do that for March. So that was the first initial hurdle done with.
Right.
Now, obviously, it was extraordinarily disappointing for Faisal, also the wonderful Anna Devon. But we've managed to reschedule dates with Faisal for March 21. We actually had a gap where we did a request out to an artist, and it just came back that they weren't free. So we jumped on it. So thankfully, we were able to reschedule that, because I think he's quite an extraordinary artist and a kind of an interesting person. And it's really nice to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I suppose the other thing is now we've to plan for April, May and June in the near term are months that look like posing difficulty. Certainly April is gone. And again, a huge disappointment, particularly for the leader, Catherine Honka, because we were launching an album which we had played with her, and that was the Piazzolla Four Seasons, the Schnittke, Mozart, Haydn, Schubert, Rondo, and we were doing 4 concerts in Ireland, and that's heartbreaking. But again, we'll be able to cover people for that. But trying to shift that now, that effectively will move a year on, so that's it's not a disaster in the sense that people still have some livelihood, but everything is thrown up. That's the situation we're in at the minute. We're also trying to devise, as imaginatively as we can, as many plans to keep an online presence. We have a large bank of recorded concerts that we do for lyrics, so we're kind of going to break them up and put them out in, I hope, like Tune a day. We've some lovely video footage, so we're going to get a program of everything free to access, of course, so that people can sort of tune in and hear what we do, and just keep as relevant as possible. And
an orchestra is such a large operation with so many people involved. If this continues for a much longer period, what's going to happen to large operations? I mean, there's a lot of thinking to be done, really, isn't it, for the future?
It is, and it's you kind of hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of cogs and wheels behind actually the end product on stage. There's people that record us, there's people that video us, there's tech people, and you're trying to keep an eye on everyone. So within the actual, I often use the analogy of sport. An orchestra is a bit like a good rugby or football or Gaelic football team. It's the more they play together, the better it gets. And we had come off the back of, we started our season with this extraordinary Beethoven 7 with Jörg Widmann and his Con Brio, and the Strauss Concertino for bassoon and clarinet. And we actually we've a recording arrangement with Alpha Classics, and we had recorded that over the following weekend. We did the concerts on I think it was Wednesday and Thursday, and then Thursday and Friday, and then on the Saturday, Sunday, Monday, we recorded in our own studio, and it was there was such an extraordinary buzz after it. It was the standard was just so fantastic, and Jörg was very emotional, and that was the first thing when we had to cancel March. Everyone was like, "Oh God, no! We've just hit this real groove." There are things that are built over the years, like momentum, like knowing Jörg, him knowing them, the players knowing each other. So yeah, it has the potential to kind of seriously knock you off track. Never mind the economics of it. I mean, that's the one you really don't want to think about, because clearly the government has to spend billions on keeping the health service going. God knows what. I mean, if you look at Italy, it's just, it breaks your heart. I mean, I was looking last night at Bergamo and whatever, and you're like, crikey, that's. So let's not think about that. I'd like to think just that this is a blip for I think it will be a couple of months, by the way. I don't think it's weeks. I think it definitely is months. We're all in touch. We're trying to keep spirits up and to get back into kind of match fitness, if you like. I don't think we'll take it too long, and there's an awful lot of muscle memory built up over the years. But let's hope it's sooner rather than later,
Do you think this is going to change our musical life, our music scene, the way we think about performance, the way we think about organising events?
Does the COVID-19 thing change us? I think it's short term it does, but no, I think people, when we get back to normal, I think people will want to go back to concerts, people will want culture, people will want to be entertained, and that's why we're going to put so much effort into trying to maintain a very real online presence during this. The board meeting, whilst very challenging today, and lots of forecasts and risk register and all that. Again, there was 9 or 10 very, very committed people, all working from their homes, all on the kind of video. And those are the kind of things that keep you going. And from my point of view as a kind of CEO of this thing, I feel a huge responsibility to keep it going. And the board, it was just great. I actually just thanked them at the end for their time and commitment, when they've all got businesses, and some of them would have businesses that are being very seriously challenged. And they gave the time today, and it was just one of those great kind of very positive engagements,
That was Jerry Keenan from the Irish Chamber Orchestra. My final conversation is with clarinetist Clare OLeary, who plays with Crash Ensemble and many other groups, and who is also an environmental activist. I asked her for her thoughts on what's happening at the moment.
So the coronavirus isn't our first existential threat. It's just the one that has stopped us in our tracks, because it's acute and it's happening right now that people are dying. But before that, as you know, we've had the 6th mass extinction going on, and that we've all been aware of for, well, at least everybody has been aware of it for at least 3 years. And some people have been aware of it since the 70s and 80s. Yeah. I started thinking when we built, myself and my husband, with help from my parents, we built a cob house by hand, so a mud house by hand here, family-sized house. Bloody ridiculous, by hand here in Cloughjordan. And I had a lot of time to think when we were building, and I was trying to think, what can I do that brings together my activism for environmentalism and my music. Mm-hmm. And I read an article. Charles Eisenstein was involved in it, and it was about a seminar that they had in Findhorn, and the subject was new myths. This idea that our culture needs new myths and new stories, basically, that the stories we have at the moment aren't serving us. Because I think this is actually already challenging our myths around what we can expect. That science, that the change happens really gradually. For instance, that we are people who are basically selfish. There is selfishness going on. Like there is, hoarding of toilet paper and hand sanitizer and vegetables. But there's also a lot of really lovely creativity going on, and people supporting one another and people pulling together, which I think changes our view of who we are and who we could be. And that's where I think the arts and music have a role to play. Although it's not so obvious to us. Obviously, the medical profession at the moment has the really obvious role, and the hauliers and the people working in shops and the carers, they have a really obvious role, and the journalists. But I think music and arts. Mm-hmm.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think music and arts have a really big role to play, and that is like we're the dreamers. We are the ones who make our living and commit our whole lives to imagining and dreaming, and we're also the people who can make a dream look really attractive to people. We can write it or dance it or sing it or perform it in a way that makes people think, oh yeah, that reality that I saw in that film or in that play or in that dance project, that is that's something I want, that change I can deal with, that is my dream now. So yeah, I think in terms of new myths and new stories and how we see ourselves, who we tell ourselves that we are, and what we believe we can do together. Because if we don't believe it in the first place, then we can't ever do it. If we don't believe that we can create a change, then we can't do it. We have to believe it first, and we have to be able to imagine what that change is first. And I think that's where arts and music comes in. And music, I have found, is very difficult to focus onto a cause. It's very difficult to say this piece of music is about this cause and it has this solution it's suggesting or it's telling you the story. But when we collaborate with film, like we always do, collaborate with film and projections and dance and theatre and writing, anything that can actually embody, show an embodiment of a person is an easier way to tell a story. But when we add music to that, it adds the emotion. It persuades people, sometimes without, it's a very rhetorical thing. It can persuade you without you even realizing you're taking in this emotion. But I think that's what our job is now, to facilitate everybody in imagining a much more satisfying life that actually holds life as sacred instead of money as sacred, that says that life is the bottom line. Whenever you're standing at a crossroads, there's always two ways to go. But I think we have to actually work at it. If we want to take this time and imagine and vision what our societies could be, given this big shock, given that we've all been made to stop suddenly and look at what happens and realize the change can happen really fast. Our world today is so different in Ireland to what it was last week. It's another reason I think this might change. Not just that people realize now that that change can happen so quickly and collapse can happen so quickly, and that we may have to do without money at some stage and sort ourselves out and take care of each other in a different way. I think it's also that we're seeing that we're all vulnerable. It started off, the media narrative was, yeah, but don't worry, it's only if you're elderly or if you're immune compromised, as if the elderly and immune compromised aren't listening to the news. But it turns out it's not, because it can kill anybody. But also we're all vulnerable to this, because there's the anxiety then. So anybody who is prone to anxiety is hugely affected by this. But we're all coming down with anxiety, I suspect. There's the isolation. There's the financial. We're all financially vulnerable now, and if we're not, we will be soon. So it's the shared vulnerability also makes change possible.
Thanks for listening to the Journal of Music podcast. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or follow us on SoundCloud. This episode was presented by Toner Quinn and produced by Shannon McNamee. For more on the Journal of Music, visit journalofmusic.com.